Hi guys, happy Monday. Welcome to podcast number 3. I am not gonna lie, this is the third time that I've tried to film this. There has been massive construction going on outside my building and my windows are only single pane, so anything going on outside you can hear very clearly, and it's just been hard to film this. And on top of that, I am so tired today. I can feel it in my energy and in my mind. Just linking sentences is kind of a struggle, so bear with me. I just got no sleep last night. I got maybe 2, maximum 3 hours. We had this really crazy windstorm in Paris, and Jahna and I in our apartment, we have these metal blinds that we roll down to keep the sun out and stuff at night. But when there are these violent windstorms, it bangs against the blinds, and it literally is the equivalent of you taking several pots and pans and hitting them together for the entire night. Like, there is no peace at all when we have these windstorms, and I don't have earplugs, but I should get them. And either way, I was laying in bed staring at the ceiling, so frustrated, ready to cry up until like 6 in the morning. So bear with me. I have some interesting topics for you guys today. I think I have lots of Instagram submissions as well. Thank you guys so much. We'll get to those closer to the end. But yeah, last week was kind of calm for me socially, if you want to say. I had my presentation for Bonjour Paris on the Wednesday, so the full first part of the week was very much me stressing and preparing for that presentation. And aside from the presentation, I got back into my sporty routine, you could say. I had basketball 3 times last week. I started going back to my boxing classes, and I also did a workout class for thighs, abs, and butt, which was so much fun. I was so nervous to go to this class because even though I'm a very extroverted social person, whenever I have to do something for the first time, it makes me feel very anxious to do it alone. And because I don't have a friend really to go to these workout classes, and I don't go with Jean, I probably thought about going to this class for 3 weeks until I finally went. And it stresses me out because typically people who go to these classes have all been before. So they know the routine, they know the choreo, they know the teacher, and most importantly, they know the equipment that they need, because you always need things like mats and bands and weights. And so when you go to a class for the first time, I feel nervous. But I went, I loved it. And again, it's just, you know, a lesson to be learned that if you want to do something, you should muster the courage, get over the fears, and do it. So that was really good. I did have the Bonjour Paris presentation on the 8th arrondissement, which went really well. I unfortunately couldn't see the chat for any period of time during the presentation because I was sharing my screen, but I was told that there was lots of positive comments and hearts and clapping emojis in the chat. So I wish I guess I couldn't have done anything because I was sharing my screen, but I wish I could have seen them. I did get a couple emails afterwards letting me know that it went really well, and the magazine did send me sort of a recap of the reviews that my presentation got, and they were all so positive. It made me feel so happy, and the magazine already reached out for me to do the next arrondissement, the 9th arrondissement, so that'll be really fun. I think that the only problem I have with doing these kinds of presentations and webinars is that whatever I do in life, no matter what, I will do it at 5,000%. I don't have it in me to half-ass a presentation, so to speak. Like, I won't commit to a presentation unless I'm going to memorize that presentation, and I'm going to read every single book on that topic so that I can have a holistic understanding and just the most knowledge possible. And I'm not going to go to a presentation unless I have a very extensive visual presentation to go along with it as well. And the problem is all of those things combined take so much time to prepare. I think for the presentation on the 8th, it probably took me 2 weeks of full-time work, and that's a lot to add into my schedule. So we'll see how I go in the future, how I can integrate it, but I really had a good time. I loved every person I met from Bonjour Paris. They were also friendly, kind, professional, and everyone in the presentation, at least from what I heard, was very supportive during my presentation. So yeah, I just had a really good experience. I'm looking forward to doing more. And if you guys did go to the presentation, or yeah, if you watch the replay of it, let me know, honestly, your thoughts on it. I really love feedback. I always like to look for ways that I can improve. So do let me know down below if you did see the presentation. But yes, okay, let's move on to our very first topic because it's kind of dramatic. And I just want to grab my iPad because I did a little bit of research and I just want to make sure I get the quotes right. It might feel a little bit like presentation-y, educational for the next 1 minute, but I just want to make sure that I get it correct, because what we're going to be talking about is the conference that Macron gave, I believe it was a few days ago, and I don't think that the conference would have hit North American news. I didn't see any translations of the conference out there, so you guys probably haven't heard of it, but basically Macron was talking about 2024 and what the vision was, what the goals were, and there was one topic in particular that has caused mass debate just because of what was said and the language used. So let's get into it because I want to give my thoughts on it as well. But basically, one part of Macron's speech, he said, our France in 2024 will also be stronger by the revival of its birth rate. And he said specifically that there will be un réarmement démographique, which basically means a demographic rearming of the country, so increasing the birth rate. And the birth rate in France is very low. I think it's about 1.68, and you need 2.1 to effectively replace the population. And not only is the French birth rate low, but it's also the lowest it's been since, I think, the First World War. So it is causing this stress, I guess. There's a lot of people who are talking about it right now. And Macron talked a lot about infertility and about how people are choosing to have children later on in life, which may lead itself to having problems in infertility. And he also provided two solutions to this problem. The first one was changing the parental leave to a shorter parental leave that would be supposedly better paid and would allow for both parents to take this leave. But the thing is, it's going from 3 years to 6 months, and we don't have any details on how it's being not paid, but like what kind of financial impact it's going to have on couples. But I think it shocked a lot of people to hear that, okay, the birth rate is falling, we want to encourage people to have more children, and so to do that, we're shortening parental leave. Like, it just didn't make sense. So we won't know until we have more details. But then the second solution he had was also, the second solution the government is going to propose is a plan to fight against infertility. And again, it was very vague. There was no concrete information on it, so we'll have to see. But those were the two main solutions that he gave. And this speech that Macron gave and this whole debate about the birth rate, coupled with all of these things I'm seeing going on in world politics right now, really gives me the impression that world leaders are out of touch with the realities of the common people. I think that for the birth rate especially, I mean, it's true, young people don't have as many children, they don't want to have as many children, and they're having children later on in life. And I feel like the solutions that Macron talked about didn't effectively tackle the problem, because if you go down to the root of this problem, at least in my opinion, I'm speaking from my experiences, my perception, my thoughts on it, is that for a lot of people, a lot of young people, there is this big question of what is the financial commitment of having a child? Because if we go back to the start of it, you know, when we were growing up, people told us, okay, go to school, get an education, you'll have a good job, and then you can buy a home. And it was this chain of events that was supposed to happen. But somewhere along the line, the money just wasn't there. Like, I've worked my whole life. I've worked since I was 14 years old. And when I was in university, I worked 3 jobs, okay? And I still graduated university with all this work experience, but also a massive amount of student debt. And it's hard to hit the next financial or life milestones when you are trying to recover from this debt that you accumulated very early on in your life. I wasn't even an adult when I took out my student loan. I was 17. And So the next financial milestone, right, is going to be, okay, you buy a house and then you get married and then you have a child, or, I mean, not necessarily for the other, but in my mind, that's how I would like to see my life play out. But I still haven't paid off my student debt. And if you look at Jahna as an example, how are we going to have a child in a small apartment that we rent? I think it's hard for young people today to look at the cost of living, to look at how hard it's going to be to buy a house, let alone even consider the financial commitment of starting a family and having a child. I think that the finances play a huge part of it, because it's not even just the financial responsibility of having a child. I mean, anyone who watches my channel that's a parent that's a parent out there would know that having a child like really does cost a lot of money. You have to, I mean, when they're a child, you have to pay for childcare. We all know that's so expensive, let alone finding a place in a childcare facility is very complicated. I was just listening to a podcast this morning that talked about how expensive it was to put your baby, like 1-year-old baby, in childcare. It's something like $20,000 per child. Can you imagine that kind of cost? My goodness. It's not just that, but then, it's getting them to school, putting them in activities, feeding them, giving them experiences. Everything just adds up. So all that to say, there is this financial commitment. And then there's also this loss of independence that I think a lot of young people are really grappling with. It's that we kind of have this idea that, okay, you work very hard your whole life and then you retire later in life. I mean, the French retirement age was pushed back. They're talking about pushing it back in the US as well. And so it's hard for young people to, I think it's hard for young people to want to sacrifice the independence they have right now in their 20s and their 30s, because they're not sure that they're going to have that same independence until way, way later on in life. And I'll give you a couple very basic examples from Jahna. I mean, Jahna and I play basketball together 3 times a week. That's an activity that we love to do. We spend time together. It's a passion of ours. But if we had a child, one of us would not, or both of us, wouldn't be able to do that activity. We'd have to take care of the child. And it's not just the sport that would be losing, it's also the connections and the social aspect of basketball, because after practice we go for a drink and we see our friends, and you have to sacrifice that. You'd have to disconnect from that. And there's a lot of other things. I mean, for women especially, right? It's known that women do more so than men bear the burden of, I mean, obviously childbirth, but then the early stages of childhood, whether you're breastfeeding or not, or you're taking care of that infant in the first few months of its life, you take a hit on your career. That's well known, that's well documented. And I don't know, it is just a huge sacrifice to your independence to have a child. And I think a lot of young people struggle to make that sacrifice when they aren't sure if they will ever get an opportunity in life again to be independent and to enjoy their hobbies and to travel. And I think as well that this independence, this idea of enjoying life and living an independent life has also been pushed back. Because if you look at me, I did 7 years of school. So I never had the chance to live an adult life. I'm not even sure how you would describe it. I never had the chance to go out and be my own person and visit the places I want to see and do the things I want to do, because for so long, like up until 24 years old, I was so focused on school. And I think that my generation and the generation after me, we are going to school for longer periods of time, which means that, yeah, we're losing, or we're pushing back the time when we can really, for a moment, enjoy some sort of independence in our life. And so I see a lot of videos on TikTok or on Instagram or YouTube that have, where women talk about their hesitations in having children. And there's always comments like, oh, that's so selfish. You know, we need to have kids, to keep the economy going and all of that. And I'm just sharing my honest opinion here, but really it is a chain of events. It's not just that I want to keep my independence. It's that if you look at the very first problem, it's the financial aspect of having a child. And if you can't even meet that aspect, why would you sacrifice every other facet of your life to try and have a child? I don't know if any of this is making sense, but I just thought it was so funny to talk about how we need to have more children in a way where it was really like women need to do their civic duty and procreate. And I think that really that having that kind of discourse, communicating about having children that kind of way really does leave out the whole aspect of why my generation and the younger generation are choosing to have kids later on in life. And the two solutions that were proposed didn't address in any way these problems that we're facing, these financial and I don't know, these problems that I think young people are facing in the decision to have or start a family. I don't know if any of that made sense, but I thought it was really interesting. But let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you're like me, if you're in your late 20s and it's been on your mind, or yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I don't really see for myself. I mean, honestly, I haven't been able to seriously consider when I'll have a child because I want to consider supporting myself first. Like, how can you support a child before you support yourself? And like I said, I'm still paying off student debt. I still don't own a home, and it's really hard to concretely think about when you're going to have a child until you have all that figured out. Okay, before we even get into the second topic, I'm gonna go get my lapel mic because I hear everything from construction to children screaming outside of my apartment. And if I can't focus, I don't even know how you guys can listen to what I'm saying. So I'll be right back. I'm just gonna grab my mic. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. I don't really like using lapel mics because I feel like it's such a crisp sound, a little bit too crisp, but I think it's better to not hear all of what's going on outside. But anyways, the second topic that I want to talk about is kind of similar, flows in the same vein, and it is about getting older. I think my first thoughts about or concerns about getting older started when I was 26, because that's when not only did I get my first gray hair, but I also started to see wrinkles, especially on my forehead. And we all have lines, like when we frown, there's always lines there. But I noticed at 26 that when I would frown, the lines would stay and they wouldn't bounce back out like they used to. And oh man, I have so many mixed feelings about getting older and looking like I'm getting older. I think there is a lot of ageism in our society, and even within me, I feel that just because I can see the changes to my body, and I also see how people treat me differently. If I look at how, especially men, treat me when I was younger, when I had a baby face, versus now when I'm older, and you feel that change, it's almost like this disregard. It just becomes something that you think a lot more about. And especially my gray hairs, I have been noticing more and more. And it's been something that, stresses me out because I committed I committed 2 years ago when this all started happening. And this might change, but for the moment, I really don't want to ever resort to cosmetic surgery or injections to to change the way I look to match a beauty standard. I think that for women, a lot more than men, because you hear this all the time, men age like wine, they get better with age, I think women are really held to this impossible beauty standard. And I don't want to be a part of perpetuating that standard. I think that if I got even small things like Botox or filler or whatever the procedures there are that are out there, I feel like if I started to get them and I started to show this fake perception of what it looks like to be 28, then I would make other women feel bad about themselves who didn't have these procedures and didn't fit the same beauty standard. And yeah, I don't know. It's been something that I've been thinking a lot more recently, especially with my hair, because again, I don't want to dye my hair. I don't want to participate in this insane beauty standard and also this denial of getting older. I mean, it is a privilege to get older. Not everyone gets to, and it's not just a privilege, but as you age, you become wiser and you have experience and you've lived so many amazing and interesting things, and it's definitely something you should celebrate and not hide. But it's hard to not want to hide when a lot of the people we see in the media, a lot of celebrities do. And this is always something that is culturally shocking for me when I come back home to Toronto, because I do think, I mean, at least from what I've seen in Toronto and in North America, women are far more likely to get these procedures. And you can notice them. Like, you can notice when someone who's my age has Botox because they don't have the lines here. And you can notice the lip filler because you just can. So I don't know, it's been on my mind a lot recently, and I would love to know what you guys think about it. But it's taking everything in me every morning not to rip out the gray hairs. And I was talking to my best friend about this because we saw these pictures of us when we were younger. I'll put them on the screen because so you can really understand what I'm about to say. But I personally would look at these pictures myself, and I remember at the time I would say, I'm so ugly, I'm so fat. Like, especially I felt like I was at a weight that was undesirable, and it made me feel undesirable. And you know, all of this was just in my head. All of this is what society tells us. And we were looking back at these photos of us when we were younger, and we're just like, oh my gosh, we were beautiful. We were so cute. And I was like, I cannot believe that at the time when that was my body, that was who I was, I hated myself. And I'm like, I really need to make the conscious effort today to think about how much I love who I am and how much I love my body, because in 10 years, I don't want to look back at pictures and be like, wow, she was so beautiful, da da da, and in the present moment, hate how I look, you know? So, I don't know. It's been on my mind, and I would love to know what you guys think about it. Especially because often I do see comments from women who are like older than me and who share their wisdom, and I love that. I love hearing about your experiences when you were younger or my age and stuff. I think it's really important to share wisdom. I'm a huge believer in the fact that as you age, you do gain wisdom and experience, and sharing that is, I think, helpful to younger people. But yeah, okay. All right. I want to go over the Instagram questions you guys gave me. I got so many, and it's so exciting. Thank you guys so much. Again, I say this all the time, but it makes my day when I hear from you guys, when I see your comments and your questions. And honestly, thank you. And I will continue every Saturday to put to put a question submission on my Instagram story. So don't miss that next week. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And the questions I got this week are so good. I'm sorry, I don't have the names. I only have the username, and sometimes it's the name, sometimes it isn't. So please forgive me. But the first question we have is from MSKS Kemi. And she asks, what would you recommend to wear in Paris for a weekend getaway in March? Thanks. And I'll go through my camera roll to give you examples of what me or my friends would wear out in March, and also to show you what the weather looks like. But March in Paris is very much on the cusp of spring. It's not cold like it is in the winter, and it's not sunny hot like it is in the spring. It really is a moment where you're going to want to have a light jacket during the day and maybe something more substantial in the evening. For me in March, I'll wear running shoes, jeans, and a jean jacket during the day, and then in the evening I'll switch over to a little lightweight puffer vest. But you definitely don't have to worry about layering. I would just make sure you bring a good sweater and a jacket for the windier moments during the day. Oh, and an umbrella. And please bring an umbrella. March and April, it definitely rains often. Not necessarily for long, but it's just annoying to be out and about and have it start raining for 30 minutes and not have an umbrella. So that's my recommendation, a light jacket and an umbrella. And also, I hope you have the best time. March is a really good time to visit. I think that it's great because it's not the hot, crowded tourist season of the summer, and it's not the dark, gray, cold winter. It's a really good time to visit Paris. You'll have such a good time. Okay, the next question is from Car Parks, and she asks, why physio? In the States, it's for if you're injured. I do a lot of physio, and it's because I am injured, but not in a way that's maybe visible. I've talked about it before, but I have really, really bad scoliosis, and I've had it for almost 20 years. And over time, what that does is if you don't do physio often to reinforce the muscles, to stretch your muscles properly, then the scoliosis puts the burden on your back, and then eventually you end up with a lot of pain. A lot of pain. Personally, I have pain 24/7. There's not a moment where I don't have pain. Like right now, I have pain. But because I've had this my whole life, I'm used to the pain. And for the most part, it's not something that's going to stop me from living my life. But there are times when the pain gets extreme and I can't do things like sit down and I can't sleep. And then when that accumulates, it is very problematic for me. And if you guys remember, or if you were watching my channel last year, I had lung problems and I broke my finger, then I had gum surgery, then I had an infected finger. So I spent 5 months not being active. And typically when I'm active, I don't have back pain, but because for so long last year I wasn't active, I ended up with very severe, very debilitating back pain. And so that's why I'm doing a lot of physio at the moment. It's that I need help to cope with this pain and learn how to correct things like posture and how to stretch to alleviate the pain that has accumulated on one point in my back. The next question is from Priscilla, and she asks, est-ce que tu t'intéresses à la politique en France ou pas du tout? PS, love your channel. Et oui, je m'intéresse de ouf aux politiques en France, mais surtout dans le monde entier. C'est un truc qui m'intéresse beaucoup de voir les politiques du monde. En France en particulier, je participe pas mal à des grèves, par exemple. Et ça m'intéresse parce que j'habite ici et même si je peux pas voter, je trouve que c'est important quand même d'être informé sur les politiques dans le pays auquel tu habites. I think I probably answered this question as well when the very first topic today was talking about Macron's speech on repopulation. The next question I have is from Joie ne sais quoi. And she says, if you wrote a book or made a film, what would it be about? And it would be in English or in French? It would definitely be in English. Even though I speak French fluently and all that, there are emotions that I have a hard time expressing in the way I want to in my second language. So I would absolutely write it in English. And I would either write a autobiography fiction. I think I've just done so many random things in life that it could be a good story to tell. I have a very bad memory though, so I think it'd be hard for you to tell that story. And if I didn't write an autobiographical fiction novel, I would write a coming of age story. Because like I said, I think if I look back on who I was when I was 20, 21, 22, and who I've become today, I just feel like I have grown so much and I've worked on myself and improved, and I'm living my life in a way that makes me so much happier than it did when I was younger. Like, I feel like your early 20s are just chaos. You're running around trying to figure out what life is and what you want. And so I wouldn't mind writing a coming of age story and sharing, advice or wisdom through that. I don't know if that makes sense. Next, we have Rashelle Legrand, and she says, would love your opinion on la recyclerie. The recyclerie, for anyone who doesn't know, is how would you describe it? It's a cafe, but it's so much more than that. It's a cafe and restaurant, but within it you have workshops and a garden and events, and it really is a community of people focused on the environment, on building community. I don't know. It's a community space, I would say. I have been there a couple times. It is always busy. I tried to go there a couple months ago with my basketball team, actually, to go for a drink after a game, but we couldn't get in because it was so busy. The one thing that I don't love about La Recyclerie is that it's located in the northern part of Paris, and from my experience, it is a little bit unsafe. I've had really crazy moments where people have tried to fight me and Jean, like, really without any explanation. I've had men follow me in this area. So from my personal experiences, I don't like to go to this neighborhood when I'm alone. It really did especially scare me when I had men follow me. And because this part of Paris, it is mostly men that you see out and about in the streets, when you are a woman by yourself, it can feel a little bit unsafe. Just because, again, I'm speaking from my own experiences. I don't want to make generalizations. It's just, there are moments when I've been in that area by myself and I haven't felt safe. And so yeah, it's a mixed bag for me. I like the concept and I like the cafe and the store, but I am a little bit weary of spending time in that neighborhood by myself. I hope that answers your question. Next, we have Fatima, who says, what is your favorite movie? Hands down, it is The Sound of Music. And I actually want to get a tattoo somewhere on my body. I was thinking like on the rib cage with a quote from the song Climb Every Mountain. And I've wanted this for a good 5 years, but I haven't figured out the design I want, and I want it to be perfect before I make the commitment of getting a tattoo. But The Sound of Music is by far my favorite movie. Robin says, there's two questions that are very similar. So one is from Robin Couton and one is from Non-Stop Paris. And they ask, have you met any of the many Chateau YouTubers or watch any of their vlogs? And then Non-Stop Paris asks, do you watch or follow any other Paris creators? And the answer to this is not very exciting. It's so simple. I really avoid, and I shouldn't, but I avoid watching other YouTubers because it makes me feel self-conscious. Anything on social media is, in a sense, a popularity contest because your success is dependent on how many views you get and how many subscribers you get. And I don't want to compare myself to other people because I will end up feeling bad about myself. I would rather just stay on my course, do what makes me happy, and share that with you guys. And I just don't want to get into a habit of comparing myself with other people to measure my success. It definitely affects me mentally to look at other creators. I do sometimes watch other YouTube channels because you get inspiration for video editing or even video concepts. But I don't watch a lot of Paris creators, honestly, because it'll make me feel bad about myself. The next question is from Kareem, who says, how has living and working in France improved your French? And I think I could just make a general comment on this one because no matter what language you want to learn, I personally think the best way to improve is to live in a country where you speak that language on a daily basis and you encounter people and you do your daily tasks in that language. What I mean by this is I've improved my French because I've had to make French friends, because I've met a partner who is French, because my in-laws are French, because I do my groceries and I go to the bakery in French. And so just the fact that I'm living in France means that I'm speaking French all the time, which wouldn't have been the case if I stayed in Canada. I think if I had just stayed in Canada, speaking French would have stopped for me after school. And I think I really would have deteriorated in my communication abilities. So that's how it's just being in a country where I speak French on a daily basis to everyone I meet has really allowed me to improve. But yes, that is the end of today's podcast. I'm sorry this was all over the place. I feel like it's been all over the place because I filmed it, or I've tried to film it so many times. I'm like switching mics and everything. The sun is setting. This has been a very overwhelming podcast to film, but I hope it was okay. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Thank you also again for sending in all your questions and comments on my Instagram post. I so appreciate it. I will never be able to put into words how happy it makes me feel to hear from you guys. And I really love spending Mondays doing this podcast. I love talking to you guys. And I love making the scripted and educational content at Paris, but the Monday podcast just fulfills me in a different kind of way. And I'm so appreciative that you guys are here. I don't know. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry today was a little bit chaotic, and I'll see you guys in my next video.